Hi, I'm Mike Malewicz. You can catch me on Twitter under this handle. And I've been designing since 1998. And over the years, I worked with a lot of really great big companies and also a lot of startups and made hundreds of projects. And I'm going to share a little bit of my experiences and what I believe are the most essential skills here. And besides working, I'm also teaching. I'm working at a local university here, and I'm doing a design class. And I've been doing this for a couple of years now. And I'm also teaching online from time to time as well. And I'm also the author of Designing User Interfaces, the book, and the co-author of Front-End Unicorn. And you can check out the books under these links. Okay, so let's start. How to be a successful designer. So to answer that question, we need to understand what is success, because it's something that actually has changed in the last few years. Because according to Instagram, success is this. So a gold watch, a Lambo, an expensive vacation, some expensive perfume, a nice house with a swimming pool, things like that. And we generally doom scroll, so we just kind of scroll our lives away basically through feeds of people showing us what success is, and we kind of get motivated to actually try to achieve those same things. But in reality, a lot of this stuff that the people are showing is rented, or the vacations are just a weekend out or a one day out, or purchased with a credit card. So it's like a distorted vision of success that we're kind of ingesting and trying to replicate that. But what is real success? So for me, over the years, and with over 20 years of doing design, I think that true success is doing what you love, but also owning your time. So what does it mean to own your time? Well, imagine a beautiful day is upon you, and you start your work at 9 a.m. and you realize that it's sunny outside, and that's not a normal thing in Poland, for example, and many places in the world as well. So you're sitting there at the computer and you're working away, and it's like all that sun outside is really inviting. So the best way to own your time would be if you were able to actually go out and have a nice walk and enjoy the sun. And then after you return, you can go back to work. But in reality, most people are bound to working 8 hours. And then the life is basically just Netflix and chill, because, when you return from work, or when you finish working, like if you're working from home, it's usually dark out. So the only thing left is to just watch some TV. And owning your time allows you to actually decide what you're going to do and when. And loving what you do is basically being constantly motivated to improve. So the more you do it, the higher the quality, but also you feel like you're improving yourself. And this is like a huge motivator. And it's actually something that is making me love what I do. Seeing my old designs and seeing how much I improved since then is a true motivator. And of course, all of that comes with more money as well, and designers can make good money. But in reality, it's all about a distinction between dreaming about that fancy car or really enjoying what you do. So like working on a nice startup design, or creating a new product with your friends during a hackathon, and then also traveling the world whenever it was possible still, because right now it's not really that possible, but whenever it was, or just enjoying yourself in general. So doing cool things and being happy, instead of dreaming about some unachievable luxury that's not really that important anyway. And most people, when they achieve that, they're not happy either.
Mike, can I interrupt you real quick? I'm so sorry to interrupt you. You're not sharing your slides right now?
Am I not?
I don't see a screen share.
Okay, that's weird. Okay, yeah, it just broke. Okay, yeah, it's back. Okay, so yeah.
Thank you.
So coming back to this, let me just click on these things. So yeah, so it's a choice between achieving some level of success that others are kind of imposing upon us with those Instagram feeds, or just being happy doing nice things and also working at a coffee place whenever they will be open, or just under a palm tree at some beach, you know, with your laptop, living the dream life, but not in like the sense of super luxury. So generally choose being happy with both work and life, and that's gonna be success, basically. So how do you achieve that? So the number one thing is discipline. And to talk about discipline, I need to go back to my story, because as I said, I was working in the design industry for a little over 20 years now. And I started in 98, but I wasn't really that disciplined back then. So the reason for me starting to work in this industry was that I was playing computer games with my friends, and we wanted to actually share our scores online because everybody was using the internet and we were kind of playing online, but there weren't really that many websites back then. So we just decided that we need a website for our kind of gamer group. So nobody knew how to make websites back in 98. There was no YouTube, there was no tutorials, and almost no information. So we kind of reversed engineered what websites were there, and we started to kind of learn from our own mistakes. And I thought that this is pretty cool, so I want to kind of continue doing this. But sadly, I wasn't really that disciplined because I was like 17 or 16 years old, and I was playing the games, so I was learning the craft and improving, but it wasn't by any means discipline. I still preferred to play the game than to kind of, you know, learn the design processes back then. So then in 2002, I started my first real job. And my first real job was in a tourist industry. So it was a website kind of like booking.com. And actually, it still exists today, but I'm not going to advertise it. But the thing is that working at a real company was a complete change from that, because it actually showed me that, first of all, you have responsibilities now. So it's actually, you need to work a specific number of hours, and you need to try to be more disciplined because people are expecting some results, you know, daily, pretty much. But it still was a pretty narrow kind of niche of learning and exploring new things, because it was just one industry. So in 2005, I changed jobs and I started working at a proper agency. And that agency worked for various companies, from startups to big brands, and they were doing websites and promotions, and then later on a couple of apps as well. So there was a much more diverse kind of portfolio of products that you could be building, and it was pretty cool, but also had some downsides that I needed to be even more disciplined to actually take that all in, to understand all of these things that are now thrown at me, and I need to be good at most of them. And then in 2009, I started at first informally my own company called Hype4, and that was even harder. Because at the start, you know, exploring new things for fun is fun. So you don't have to be disciplined because it's still fun, and nobody is going to tell you did something wrong if you're doing it for yourself, and you're not really getting clients or anything. It's just a for fun project. But then in the first real job, you get to understand how working works, and it can be a big change from the standard dream of, you know, a teenager dreaming about being a web designer, and then kind of confronting the reality of how this industry works. And then the agency job brought me diverse projects, but then in 2009, my own company taught me about running a business, and that requires a ton of discipline to basically don't go under, because times were tough, and they are tough right now, but they were always tough for new companies entering the market, because you don't really know anybody, you don't have any customers. So a lot of discipline is necessary to actually make it all work. So when I started my company, I already had 10 years of experience, but I realized that I still don't really know anything. Like, I know how to make a website, but I don't really know a lot of the things around it. So from 2009 to 2014 at Hype4, we created, I think it was about 500 different projects. And you can see a nice collage of them here. And most of those aren't really paid projects. So like maybe like 1/3 of them are, but the rest is basically projects that we've done for fun or to explore new ways of creating websites, apps, little games and things like that. So we created that much stuff in 5 years. And of course, this is just one screen per project, and they had multiple screens and sometimes dozens or hundreds of them. So we tried to be super disciplined to actually try to achieve that level of working working that enough hours, or putting in enough hours to be better at what we're doing. Because Malcolm Gladwell said in his book that you need at least 10,000 hours to become a master of something. And I think that we've put in somewhere around that in those few years collectively. And we didn't really become masters, but we realized that it actually gets a lot easier once you do a lot of these projects, and once you're more committed to doing them daily and regularly. So my goal was to become a unicorn designer, and that's kind of why I started this 500 projects idea. But many people, especially a few years ago, because right now it's changing a little bit, but many people are asking me, especially in the design industry, why should you be a unicorn? Like, I like my narrow niche. I'm a workshop facilitator, or I just do the wireframes, or I just do the mock-ups or anything, and I just like doing just this one thing. And the reason for being a unicorn is that the whole UX world is changing, and it has been changing for a while now. And it has been changing because it's been, let's say, 14 years since the first iPhone was released, and it kind of redefined this whole mobile world and mobile experience. And that also means that it's been 14 years since many people, millions of people, billions of people have been using mobile devices. And they've been using them, and they've been frustrated by them. They've been delighted by the products, on them. So actually, a lot of the customers know design because they know what works and they know what doesn't work. So they know the apps that are horrible because they are hard to use, hard to read, and have frustrating or confusing flows. And they know what works. So people are starting to understand the industry and the design part of it a lot more, like regular people. So we don't really need designers to understand design, because if you try to communicate a design project that you're working on to anyone that's been using a mobile phone for 10 years, they'll likely understand most of what you're saying, because this is just similar patterns over and over with a twist or two. So I believe, and I'm seeing this especially in small businesses, that it's going to be split into researchers that know a little bit of design, designers that know a little bit of research and the basics of at least CSS to talk to the developers, and then the front-end developers that know their stuff, and they also know a little bit of design so they can communicate better. Because the era of designers who don't design is slowly coming to a close. Of course, they're going to be there for a while in larger organizations, because first of all, sometimes it is needed for a team to be larger and to have people that can facilitate that team. But in smaller companies, they want generalists. So they want people who understand a lot of the broader area of working on a product. And overall, the overlapping skills between the people working on a product are the best thing for communication. Because if somebody is a designer who doesn't design and has no sense of the visuals or no sense of the information architecture, and then some researcher comes with research results, and they don't really convey the potential possibilities of what can be done with these results, because they're on completely different levels, all of them. So communication really improves with overlapping skills, and I believe that T-shaped designer is not really the best way to go. So the best, it says T-shirt, I mean T-shaped. So T-shaped is basically a designer that knows one skill very well and a lot of the other skills on a need-to-know level. And I believe the way to go is more of a pyramid-shaped designer, which means that they know one skill very well and sort of surrounding skills pretty well, really, really good, but not perfect. But it allows them to talk to people who are better at these skills to kind of convey the ideas better and easier. So how to be a great designer? Well, it's easy. You need to design, and you need to design a lot. And by designing a lot, I mean like the things that we did with 500 different projects. And you can try to make a daily design challenge. But the thing about these challenges is that sadly, we are as people not really that consistent. So when we start on day one, we're like all excited, and I'm starting a design challenge, and it's going to be awesome. And after 30 days, I'm going to have 30 designs, and it's going to be beautiful. But then around day 3 or 4, it starts to become tiring, and you don't really see any progress or any improvement because it's not really that fast. And most people actually quit after day 6. And you can see it with many portfolio sites or many daily design challenges that are posted on the internet, that people are posting day 1, day 2, and usually around day 5, 6, or 7, nothing else is coming. So basically people give up. And if you survive through that day, and I've seen some people, even in our own community, that did that, and it's great, but most people don't. So you need to be really committed to go over day 6 and still keep improving. And of course, there are always easier things, like you can just watch Netflix and relax and kind of have this better work-life balance. But in general and in the long run, it's really a lot less rewarding because you're not gonna feel like you actually accomplished something. And I don't really mean that you need to spend all of your life designing every day, because it doesn't make sense. You need rest, you need exercise, you need to have fun, you need to socialize and all that. But those personal learning experiences can take around 30 minutes. And if you do them daily, it just compounds over time into a lot of really great learning experiences, and, well, you becoming a much better designer. So the first question many people asked me when I showed them this presentation before was that, oh, but it's UI only, like, so you're gonna learn to make a nice button or something, or like a nice card. And no, not really, because those exercises can be anything that is design related, especially if you're trying to be a generalist or if you're trying to be a unicorn. So first of all, if you can't do research, you can improvise. So you can do Twitter surveys. Like if you're making a personal project and you really need to learn, and of course, for personal projects, you can probably do proper research. But even doing a Twitter survey and analyzing the data that you get, analyzing the results, is going to be an exercise that you can do. And also, it can be a fun way to uh, engage into conversations with people that know a lot more and learn from them. So this is one way. And of course, in information architecture, you can dissect a popular app or a website and try to recreate its flow and try to understand why they did it this way. So you can just break it down into smaller elements and try to put it back together. And these exercises can take 30 minutes. You don't have to complete them on a day, just spend 30 minutes practicing, and it's going to be a big change. And of course, right now, with all the good patterns coming from the user experience design, I think that the user interface is actually the main differentiator for products, because it's been 14 years or so, or something around that, of mobile devices, of touch screens, and it's been even longer for web-based products. And people are really used to some practices, some patterns. So if you're making an e-commerce site, it's likely that the shopping cart or the checkout will be in the top right. It's basically what they're expecting. And there are many good practices for login, registration, onboarding, and you can't really reinvent the wheel in many cases. So the main differentiator is going to be the UI, and most people completely neglect the UI because they think it's childish, it's like painting with crayons, and it's not really something that proper designer researcher should even try to do. Well, I believe that you should work with UI as much as you can, even if you're not going to be a UI designer, because basically people buy with their eyes. So if you're working on a startup or on a product for a bigger company, the way it looks is actually going to be the very first impression people get. If they're browsing the App Store, or if they're going onto the website, before they engage with it, they see it. And it's something that will basically affect their decision to either use it or not. So before any experience with the flow or with the product market fit or anything, they will just see it. And also, there are some design tool tricks that you can try and learn, because mastering your tools is going to make you more efficient. And being more efficient is good because you can actually spend more time doing other things that are more fun than just moving rectangles around in a design tool. So here, just one trick that I think that most people are missing in design tools. You can do it in Figma or Sketch or Adobe XD or pretty much any tool. There is this difference between moving objects on the artboard from point A to point B. And you can use the keyboard arrow keys to do that. And let's imagine that we want to move this blue rectangle to the left from the distance of 63 to 55. So let me just quickly play this little animation. So you can just press the left arrow 8 times, right? And it's just gonna nudge it to this distance. But it's not really that efficient, right? It could be improved. So just this little thing. So let's try this again. And this time we can push it by 10 points and then push it by 2 points to the other side. So basically you can just do 3 keystrokes instead of 8 to achieve the exact same results. And things like that also compound over time. So you're going to be much faster, much more efficient, and you can actually focus on more important things in the design than moving rectangles. And also, if you're not working in design systems, you can try to recreate quick icons, because in many cases, these are just very simple shapes. So you can just take a shape and just combine 2 different lines, types of lines, rotate it, and you can have a magnifying glass or a search icon. Just 3 simple shapes can be an edit icon. So like things like that make you a faster and more efficient designer when you can instinctively and automatically do these things, and your main focus and your main attention is actually on the good thing, about solving problems, not really about where to move a rectangle. Okay, and then the second thing after discipline is curiosity, and it's not a coincidence, but this presentation in a way was actually prepared before I even learned that curiosity was gonna be the topic of this whole event. So curiosity, I think, is really, really important, because if you don't explore new things and if you're stuck in this narrow niche that you're working on, it's gonna get boring, because it's gonna get repetitive. And even if the projects are varied and they're gonna change, it's still, after some time, just doing the same kind of mental exercises to solve the similar types of problems, it's just gonna get boring and you're gonna be less motivated, and that will lead to being, well, less happy. So first of all, design is visual, so you'd better try to be visual, at least to some extent. And it doesn't mean that you need to be a proper full-time UI designer. Just experiment with some basic, simple UI patterns or visual patterns, just to understand them. You don't really need to be doing them in the project, but try to recreate them on your own time to be better at making them. Another thing that I find really refreshing and relaxing is voxel art. And of course, this is not like tied to design directly, but it's something that is oddly refreshing after long hours of staring into Sketch or Figma, because this is like a way of making 3D illustrations where you're not really using all that complex UI that most 3D tools have, but instead you're kind of stacking Lego bricks on top of each other. So you just kind of you just create one little shape, and then you put another shape on top of that, and you start building this blocky, nice looking things. And this is my workspace, not the one that I'm at right now, because I'm at another location, but this is basically my workspace, and I created this in 5 or 7 minutes. And this is a great way to get an understanding for how 3D works in like the very basic level, because 3D is, whether we like it or not, is becoming a thing with virtual reality, augmented reality, and in any other, directly tied to the user experience areas. So understanding a little bit of 3D and also being a little bit relaxed after work by just making something is a great way to break up the boredom. And also, there are new tools that can allow you to make really nice 3D shapes and objects and even animations. One of them is Spline, where you can just get the free version and play around with this. And you can use pretty simple shapes and a UI design to create your own 3D mockups and manipulate them in 3D space, or have like a completely 3D portfolio. So learning Spline, for me, after knowing Sketch and Figma, it took me about an hour maybe to really get a hang of the whole interface and to start creating. And I never had any experience outside of voxels, which work a lot differently with any 3D. So I just learned this even though I didn't have to, because it was something new. So it was exciting to try it. And another thing that especially I find really important is writing. And writing is generally the way to grow as a designer, because if you start writing about design problems and potential solutions, that first of all you need to have a more critical way of approaching them, but also you get really awesome comments from people on your writing, and that leads to nice discussions, and that leads to learning better. And it's really inspiring. And have written, I think, about 100 articles over the last 2 years exploring different areas, and they led to really great conversation, and they basically led to me learning a lot, because by writing I'm also learning. And I think that Terry actually said something like that on Twitter recently, and I find it really inspirational. So writing is a great way to be a better designer as well. And of course, you need to try to stay on top of the game, because there are always some new ways of doing things. So first of all, this entire no password registrations and logins that are taking over right now, this is likely going to be the future of creating accounts and logging into services. So exploring how to make those is a pretty good way to stay curious and stay in this sort of exploratory mode. But also, blockchain and cryptocurrencies has been blowing up for a while now, and they have horrible designs, and both visual and the entire experience is just done by developers. So there's a lot of areas to understand blockchain and understand crypto, and try to actually help that whole industry and this whole genre to actually take off, because they need designers. So understanding that is going to be crucial. It's going to be here to stay, and it's not going anywhere. So all those new things that are happening around us, and all those new things that are coming to the market, try to understand or kind of follow them to some extent, and then use that time to play around with some of them. You don't need to be a blockchain designer, but at least know what it is and how it works. Or you don't need to do a no password registration in every product that you're building, but at least know what are the benefits of it and what are the potential downsides. And of course, read case studies is also a great way to be curious, because by seeing how other people solve some particular problems can give you ideas on how to solve problems in your products. And also it can actually lead you to a lot of ideas that you normally wouldn't really get, that aren't even sometimes related to those case studies. Just your mind kind of jumps from their problem to a potential solution to something completely different. And most of all, you need to love what you do, because that's the only way that the whole learning process and the curiosity will be a fun activity. And that's the main thing. I think that if you don't love what you do, you're going to be at work. But if you do love what you do, it's going to be all life, because it's going to be a happy life, because loving what you do is basically a way to not have work being a chore. It's basically work is going to be a fun activity. So yeah, thank you. And if you want to get my book with some discounts, you can use this promo code here. And yeah, that's it from me for today. Let me just minimize that.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. And thank you for the promo code for your book. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, so you can also like download quite a lot of it for free. So just it's just in case somebody wants to check the full one out. But like we give a lot of knowledge for free, because I believe that sharing knowledge is after that many years in the industry is essential, because otherwise we would just go crazy.
Absolutely, I do agree. Sharing knowledge is so important. So awesome. Thank you so much for your talk, Mike. And it's really exciting. This is the first time we've actually talked in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like it's been a crazy month. So I kind of finally logged on. I didn't have my microphone, so hopefully it was all clear. But yeah, nice to see you here.
Nice to see you. And yes, we can hear you clearly. So we do have a few questions that I'm excited to ask. So John Rodriguez asked, how do you go about deciding on design tools?
Okay, so the main thing about designing and using the tools is that you need to understand that the tools are not important. So there is this whole kind of feud right now between Figma and Sketch, that like Figma is better or Sketch is better. But in reality, it doesn't matter, because you can achieve pretty much the same results in both. And you can achieve the same results in PowerPoint in most cases. Like most simple designs you can make with just PowerPoint shapes. So the tools are not that important. And I try to check out all the tools, and I'm in the sort of Sketch crowd for most of my work because it fits my workflow better. But I need to use Figma, so I know Figma. I'm not a fan of it. But I tried it enough to know why I'm not a fan of it. So it's not really like any personal thing. But I also tried pretty much every tool that comes to market. So when Spline showed up, I just downloaded it and started playing around with it. When Protopie showed up, I did the same. When Rotato, which is a very nice 3D mockup tool, showed up, I just got a copy and started playing with it. Because it's also pretty exciting that people are still making new tools and that you can try new things. Because back in the day when I was starting in 98 or maybe 2002 in the first job, we just used Photoshop for everything. And it's a very limited piece of software, and a lot of the web technologies were limited as well. So just knowing what you can achieve right now in any design tool is completely mind-blowing, and understanding with like how different tactics we had to use to pull off like a rounded corner button back in 2002. And right now you just click a number and that's it. Oh yeah. I think you're muted, Jessica.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that, Mike.
All right.
Yeah, there is a plethora of design tools now, and it is curious in that, everyone has a favorite or everyone has a preference, and then companies have their own preferences too. Once they kind of use a tool, that becomes their content and design repository, right? All of their work kind of lives in there.
Yeah, but they're similar enough to each other then that once you learn one of them, transitioning to the other one is going to be painless. So I don't think that you should learn just Figma right now because it's the more popular one. Learn the one that makes you design faster and makes your workflow better. And if you'll have to switch because of your company, then you can do it in like a matter of day or two to like relearn some patterns that are a little bit different between them. But it's all the same. It's just basically I say this a lot to my university students that they feel like overwhelmed by this whole design thing. But in reality, design is about moving rectangles around, basically. So whatever tool you use, just move the rectangle to the right spot and you'll be fine.
That is very true. It is just moving rectangles around. And similar to that too, there's a lot of research tools out there, and one in particular caught Anna Wu's eye. So she has a question of, how do you do tweet research?
Okay, so this is actually tricky because I've done it just a couple of times, but I've heard some people do it with a lot of success. So they are doing, like, if you're a junior designer especially, you need to have at least some research in your portfolio if you want to show that you're not just doing UIs. So you can either do nonprofit projects, and there are plenty of nonprofits that need design work, and you can do some research for them. But in most cases, there is just no way that you can do research. So if you do a small survey on Twitter or like anyway, or LinkedIn, or just any platform where you can get to some people, you can then use the knowledge that you gain from those people, from those answers, and try to analyze it like it was a normal survey among the users, because it's not going to be a true product with a true research pattern and a true kind of, redesign scenario. It's just going to be your for fun project, and just by analyzing the data. Like if you get any way to do quantitative, then that's perfect. But if you just get qualitative, then it's still, you can analyze what people said, and you can try to dissect it and understand it and kind of propose some solutions. And even though you'll never get to actually make them because it's not really your product, you're just analyzing somebody else's product, you can get you can get into a mood of kind of, or sort of, you can get onto the path of being a researcher without any kind of access to the actual data. So of course it's kind of not that serious data and not that serious way of researching, but if you don't have anything else, it's still something.
Right. That is very true. Something is better than nothing, right? It's better to do some research than no research.
Yeah, and if it's just your portfolio, it's more about showing that you know that research is important and you know how to analyze some data than showing a real project that it might take you a year or two to actually get to a real project to show it. And you can have something a lot sooner to kind of show that you know the basic principles of research.
Right. Awesome. And tweet research sounds very innovative. And so we have a question in the chat from Terry Rodriguez, actually our workshop coordinator. She asked, what does innovation mean to you?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because like on the side, next to my normal activities, we're also building a lot of startups and trying to come up with some creative solutions to problems that people might be having. And I think that right now the innovation part is all about figuring out the best way to help somebody in a way that they will be happy to give you money for it, basically. But innovation in terms of saving time for people, which right now is really important. So like all these AI tools that can do things for you, this is going to be the future. But I'm not really for innovation for the sake of innovating, but more like innovation into like a real change. So if you can actually make someone's life better, or if you can shorten their work time by 5 minutes every day, then it's worth it. But I don't really think that innovating in typical flows of like touchscreen based devices is a good thing, because people are so used to them, and people are so kind of, those patterns are enforced by popular apps like Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, that if you try to innovate too much in them, people will actually get lost in your product. So it's all about innovating more in the sort of product market fit than the actual interfaces. But also, just to mention that, on top of that, always make super nice visuals for everything, because people are visual and people are going to invest themselves more emotionally in a product if it looks good. So there's some space of innovating in the visual side. There are new trends coming. Some of them are not as accessible, but you can make them a little bit more accessible. So just trying those new trends is also like, I'm personally responsible for two very non-accessible trends, and people are bashing me for it, like neumorphism and glassmorphism. But actually, both of them can be accessible if you just do them right. They're not accessible in their kind of starting sense, but that doesn't mean that people shouldn't try to play around with them as part of their learning exercises. Because if you try to play around them because they're new, well, you'll be innovating in the UI spectrum a little bit, but also you'll be learning why they're not accessible and how can you actually make them accessible, or how can you just use little parts of them for a truly accessible product. So yeah, I like innovating more in basically trying to make somebody's life easier, just even by a tiny bit, because you can't really make it profoundly easier right now anymore, because a lot of the things has been done. But even just a little bit every day, it compounds into something bigger.
Right. That makes sense. It's kind of a bit of entrepreneurship, right? You see an opportunity there that maybe it's hard to see because we're kind of fixed in certain ways of doing things, but making a small change actually has a huge impact.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it's just that I have an idea that I think is really good, and it takes me years to build upon it without ever going to market, because I have 5 new ideas at the same time. But yeah, I'm just guilty of just having too many projects that I'm invested in personally.
Right. Absolutely. That makes sense. So one last question before we let you go. How do you stay motivated doing daily designs, getting over that 6-day hump? Asked by Elaine Shi.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a good question because most people don't get through that day 6. And I think that one good way to actually do it is when you know that this day number 6 is the toughest, then you can actually start expecting it and you can be ready for it. So you can actually kind of, understand that this is probably the hardest time like if you're doing it for a month. Day 6 or day 7 is going to be the toughest. Day 20 is going to be easy compared to that. But like if you keep being motivated through that by knowing that most people quit on that day and you never did, then on day 20 you'll be like, yeah, I can do those 10 next days easy, and I can maybe do like 30 more days, so like 60-day design. So in general, you need to motivate yourself, but you also need to know that if you pass the day number 6, you're in like 5% of people, so you're already a winner.
Wow, I love that. Once you get to day 6, you're already a winner. Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Mike, broadcasting live from Poland. We did put your YouTube channel in the chat, so hopefully people
thank you.
who watch his YouTube videos, they're very informative, very educational, and he's just an inspiring speaker. Thank you so much, Mike. Round of applause.